Welcome, folks, to Indian Hill football season. It's the 2018 season. I'm here with Tony Arcuri, the head coach of the Braves. I'm Robb Young on the IHTN Sports Network. Tony, another season. This will be your fifth season. You've got a great record as a head coach here at Indian Hill. Obviously, your best season was in 2015 when you went 11-1, ran the board. Got a tough schedule ahead of you, coming right out of the chutes. Let's talk a little bit about last year. You guys ended 9-3, a little bit of a sour ending in the playoffs against Wyoming.
Sure.
But you had a lot of players that were banged up by that time of the season.
Yeah, Rob, I mean, I think that's the case, with a lot of people. You get to November and you have to be able to, deal with the war of attrition, the war of injuries. I think the good news is with this year's squad, given that this is our fifth year here as a staff, there's more depth than there ever has been at key positions. And we've discussed the fact that, when you get to November, you have to have that because injuries are part of the game. Being banged up is part of the game. So I feel very good, from that standpoint, with the depth issue that we've had, perhaps the best since we've been here from a numbers standpoint.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're coming into this season. Obviously, we're starting with New Richmond. We'll talk a little bit about that. But you've got 7 returning starters on offense, 8 on defense. There's probably a few other guys in there that could technically be considered starters if you counted special teams.
Absolutely.
Like Luke Lomberg as a kicker, which is going to be critical. Who knows how long that's going to last on kickoffs. But, you've got 2 big seniors coming back on your line in Jalen Thornton and Joe Oakes. Both are considered top prospects. Both have committed to D1 programs. Jalen obviously going to his father's alma mater, cut from good cloth, as we would say. And then Joe Oakes going to OU. I've already given Pat a little bit of a hard time. I'm a UC alumni, so seeing Joe go to OU was not a fun thing for me. But both great young men, great players, athletic, fast. Even though they both tipped the scale at over 250.
Right. When we started this segment about November football, and one of the things that we certainly have realized over the past few years is that to win at a high level, you have to be able to run the football and you have to be able to stop the run. With Jack Henkin coming back as a 3-year starter on that defensive line as well, to really, the pieces are in place to have a dominant defensive line. Jalen and Joe being, the big part of that.
Yeah, and obviously you've got Cole Dean returning, led the CHL in yardage, pass yardage last year, 22 touchdown passes. What he didn't have last year was a strong backfield, and you're bringing 2 big, strong running backs, and John Mark and Demetrius.
Right. We're very blessed in that respect, and we can't, as a coaching staff, underestimate the power and the athleticism that those 2 guys can bring to the table. I think Cole will continue to do great things, but I think in some respect, hopefully those things are a little bit easier, a little bit more buffered by a strong offensive line and then 2 phenomenal running backs. Some teams are lucky to have 1 marquee running back. I really do believe this year we're blessed to have 2.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at films from last year, where Cole struggled a little was when he was flushed out of the pocket. He's not a running back. This will allow him really to be that pocket quarterback that he's probably more suited for, and have some, you bring junior Trey Lopez into the mix, who's quick, fast, can turn a screen pass and quickly into a 60-yard touchdown run.
Correct. And I think you're dead on there. Certainly, I don't think that has to be the case this year. There are plenty of guys all around when you talk about John Mark, Demetrius, Trey Lopez, Luke Hammond, who has really come on as a sophomore. Charlie DeGennaro, who's really come on as a sophomore. There are guys there that can shoulder a lot of that load. And we don't have to have any one individual win us a football game. And quite honestly, it is no secret. Someone will have to emerge as that vertical guy. Now, there are plenty of candidates, and some of them I mentioned, but somebody will have to surface and fill in that role, definitely.
So what do you see happening in that new Richmond game?
Well, I think, they're what they have been. They are offensively led by a very electric playmaker who we've dealt with now for 3 years in Josh Anderson. And so, we're prepared. He makes the system go as we always have been prepared. It is so hard, as you mentioned, to gauge an opponent, particularly in week one.
Yeah.
You have so few elements to go by. Obviously we have a scrimmage, and then we have the Marymount scrimmage as well, and it's just so hard to gauge. Is it the other opponent's, perhaps struggling, or is it the other opponent holding things back because it is a scrimmage? It's well into week 3 before you can really use film sometimes as a definitive indicator of where a team is. So we've got to be prepared for anything. The beauty of that is so do they. I think defensively, they're a 3-3 stacked team, which they have been for the 5 years that I've been here. They don't give you a whole lot of different looks, so you kind of know what you're getting and you just line up and play football. I think it's going to be a good one. I think as most times when teams are close in ability and skill, it's going to come down to execution and turnovers, and it always does. So.
It'll be fun to watch this team this year. We start off with New Richmond, a non-league game, then you have 2 more non-league games, one against CHCA,
Right.
and then one against Aiken. Both of those are kind of unusual games. CHCA is not the same program that it was maybe 3 years ago.
Correct.
But they're always going to be a competitive bunch.
Absolutely. Yeah, CHCA, I think is a team that would do well in our league. I think playing in the league in which they play, sometimes they don't see the competition that, frankly, I think they'd like to see. They don't. They're not dodging anybody. I mean, they're playing us in week 2. They're playing Wyoming in week 3. It's that too will be a very good game, and it's a big playoff point earner. We fell to them last year in the 4th quarter, and we've got something to prove in that one. That's for sure.
Who do you see in the league as the dark horse this year? Because there's been a lot of coaching turnover.
Absolutely. Funny that you mentioned that. Usually at the beginning of the season, before 2 days begin, I text all the CHL coaches, just, hey, good luck, stay injury free. And I only had 3 of those coaches in my phone because there's so much newness when it comes to the coaching staffs in the CHL. So it does make that dark horse very hard to predict. Wyoming is obviously going to be good, and we're going to be competing with them, and we're going to see how that goes. But we certainly respect everybody because, in some respects, we don't know what to expect. With all this newness, and so when I look at a team like Reading, I always have to put them up there. It's they play hard, they're tough kids, they care about winning, and it's not to say that the other programs don't, but I guess if I had to say keep a distant watch on one team, it would certainly be them at this point.
Great. So, tradition in Cincinnati, 22 years of it, the Skyline Crosstown Showdown.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You guys have played in it every year. It's funny, there's a game back at Paul Brown Stadium. I remember when you were actually an assistant coach at Indian Hill before you went to Madeira.
Exactly.
And my nephew was a senior playing for Indian Hill. We actually got to play at Paul Brown
That
Stadium.
was a
And
neat
I
experience.
think that was one of the last years that any high school team
Yes.
played down there.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're having a game down there this year, actually this week on Friday night. So you see Marymount in the showdown this year. Again, Marymont's kind of one of those teams. It's hard to figure out what they're going to be like, and they've not had a strong youth program, which hasn't given them a strong middle school program. But new coaching.
Yeah, it's one thing about scrimmages that I know about Coach Cummins over there at Marymount is he uses scrimmages as an utter evaluative tool, So he's going to keep his cards close to the vest when it comes to scrimmages. And so while frankly, things didn't look all that great against New Richmond last Friday, I don't think that's the same Marymount team we're going to see in September. And I will tell you, I don't know what goes on. It's almost like a little bit of a curse, and I say that jokingly, but gosh, we go down there and we seem to have a little bit of trouble,
I think every Indian Hill team does, regardless of the sport.
Right, and the games are oftentimes closer than they need to be. And it's sort of hard to explain. You'll look at us versus them on paper, and this is true of years past, and maybe true this year, I don't know. And then you think, okay, well, this should be a game where, we're really going to have to fall apart in order not to be successful. But then we go down there and something just happens. I don't know. So I'm always wary of that one, irregardless of where the records stand or what the numbers say.
I'm hoping we have an opportunity later in the season to have another conversation, but obviously I always call it the big game. It's always the last game of the season.
Right.
The good news is that game's at home this year.
Right. And look, like I said earlier, you respect every opponent that you play, but there's no secret about it. If we can beat Wyoming, the chances are we can beat anybody on our 10-game schedule. Our kids know that. And so it's not as if we overlook anybody. Trust me, we don't allow our kids to get in that mode. But in the back of our minds, we know what we want to accomplish and what we want to happen when we walk down onto that field week 10 and play Wyoming.
Yeah, and I think the key to this, and the reason I bring up all these games, is one thing that Indian Hill could use some support is those stands being filled with not only students, alumni, but parents.
And it makes a difference. It makes a difference. When you look at programs that play and compete at a state championship level, particularly smaller schools, it makes a difference. It takes more than just a coaching staff and some football players to take the next step. It takes a committed community, a community that cares. And the more people that we see in those stands, the more energy we gain from it.
Folks, I'm Robb Young with Indian Hill Television Sports Network with Coach Tony Arcuri and the Indian Hill Braves football for the 2018 season. We'll see you in a few minutes for the kickoff of the first game of the season, Indian Hill Braves versus New Richmond.
Thank you.